Afternoon. Today WSBS brings you a special broadcast by members of the Canaan Fire Company, direct from our Federal Home Studio in Canaan. This coming week, the Canaan Fire Company will hold its 46th annual Washington's Birthday Ball. And today we're going to give you some of the history behind this annual observance and the other activities of the company also. To get things rolling and to introduce the participants on today's program, here is the chairman of the Publicity Committee, Mr. Francis W. McCarthy.
Thank you, Ned. We are fortunate this year in having, in addition to other media, the facilities of radio station WSBS to bring you our message. And we are grateful for this opportunity to talk to you personally. Fire protection was originated out of the basic human motive of self-preservation. Present-day large communities started with mutual aid societies when they were small. These societies were manned by volunteers who made themselves responsible for the protection of life and property against the threat of appalling devastation and paralysis which results from the terrible raging of a fire that is beyond control. A small community like North Canaan, with a property valuation of perhaps $15 million and about 3,000 souls, is as greatly in need of good fire protection as the larger communities. But there is not the wealth available for the kind of paid personnel and fire equipment which can be had in the larger places. Canaan Fire Company had its beginnings about 46 years ago when the present independent volunteer mutual aid organization was started to afford protection against the devastating catastrophe of fire whenever it threatened our village. From meager beginnings, the company has voluntarily independent status at owning and maintaining its own property and equipment free and clear, with title in an independent corporation which is not a branch of government or allied with any political existence. It has managed to obtain the bulk of its needed revenues for operations from activities sponsored and carried on by the company. Activities such as this ball, minstrel shows, and similar events. A custom which was established in those beginning years and one which still continues. Here the whole job is the responsibility of members of the community who are willing to do that job voluntarily. No one is paid for his services, and financial support comes partly from tax sources, but mainly from fundraising events like this. The ball is the source of about 50% of the company's financial needs in any one year, and when there are greater needs to be met, additional functions are scheduled to help increase the take to finance the added requirements. In organizing and carrying out an event like this, the Publicity Committee has an important job in acquainting people interested in helping to support the company with what this 46th annual Washington's Birthday Ball is all about and why it is so important to the company's well-being. There are various aspects to this event that are important for you to know, and there are things of interest that the company wants you to know about. This is why we, 4 active members of the Canaan Fire Company, John F. Mullen, Chief, Fred Wolfert, President, Warren Foley, Chairman of the Ball, and myself, Francis W. McCarthy, Chairman of the Publicity Committee, are assembled here with Frank A. Whiting, a charter member and former chief. We wish to discuss plans and details that are pertinent to the 46th annual Washington's Birthday Ball, which is being held this year, as in the past, to raise funds to be used in projects and operations of the company. We are striving to give you a better picture of how the company has grown in importance to the committee through the years, what has been accomplished in promoting efficiency in the company, the importance of this fundraising event, and other facts which you may find interesting. Now I'll turn the microphone over to these other members of the company. First, to give you the story of the early days of the company, here is our president, Fred Wolfert.
Thank you, Frank. The story of the Canaan Fire Company begins on May 5th, 1911. On that day, a meeting was called to order to form a volunteer fire company in the town of North Canaan. This action stemmed from a need for a regular force of firefighters and equipment. At this first meeting, a group of men were elected as temporary officers. A foreman and a first and second assistant foreman were elected and appointed as a committee to receive applications for membership. Arrangements were made to rent a tin garage in the rear of the Canfield block on Main Street as the firehouse. At the second meeting of the organization, the bylaws of the Millerton Fire Company were adopted until such time as the group could draw up its own bylaws. At this meeting, 21 men were taken in as active members. The third meeting found the organization forming in a permanent manner, and the name of the Canaan Hose Company No. 1 was officially adopted. Permanent officers were elected. It was from this beginning 46 years ago that our present company evolved. A.J. Wigglesworth was the first chief, or foreman as they were then called. The other original officers were First Assistant Foreman A.L. Huggins, Second Assistant Foreman L.J. Streck, President George Rogers, Vice President O.J. Vosberg, Secretary Alan Fuller, and Treasurer George P. Hardenberg. In the June meeting, decoration of the hose carts for parade was mentioned. This was the first mention of any firefighting equipment. Now I would like to ask Mr. Frank Whiting, who is one of the charter members, if he will tell us where that equipment came from and if he will describe it. Mr. Whiting.
Thank you. When the fire company was originally started, the only piece of equipment in the village was really a parade wagon that the old Village Improvement Society had purchased. It was not a piece of equipment that could be used easily, and our good friend Al Huggins, the blacksmith, took it to his shop, cut it in two, made two jumpers. Then we had two hose carts. The original parade wagon had been located in a shed in back of a store, frozen in the ice.
Those two jumpers or two-wheeled hose carts were hand-drawn, were they not, Mr. Whiting?
Yes.
The first big affair held by the company took place in August of 1911, and really was quite an undertaking. Some 100 to 125 men came by train from New York City, and the hose company undertook to feed them. Mr. Whiting, will you tell us, please, why those men were in town and what the company fed them that day?
The Borden Company, a milk handling concern here in Canaan, on the location where we are now, considered this plant their model bottling plant, and they wished to show it off to their peddlers in New York. They leased a train and brought up these men, but there was the need of feeding them. The fire company took the job. Alan Fuller was chairman, and he searched all kinds of ways to get equipment. He borrowed all the knives and forks and spoons from all the churches and lodges, which would loan them at that time and not now. The extra materials we had to go to the store, G.L. Parsons' department store, and borrow. Any pieces we did not return, we would pay for. We fed them boiled potatoes, steamed fish, steamed corn, and apple pie. Freeman Dempsey made a 40-quart can of red lemonade that lasted about 3 minutes. And the stage was used in the old town hall for the supply. The hall was fitted with benches. Girls were used for waitresses. And all the equipment had to be carried up and down the back stairs under the stage, which soon got so slippery we could not run up and down it. But we got away with it.
Thank you. During the first year, various fire alarm systems were investigated, but it seems that for some time the alarm was sounded by the ringing of the Methodist Church bell. In 1912, the membership of the company was set at 30 active members and a waiting list. We now have 40 members and a waiting list for membership. The annual ball was started in 1912, and that year it was held on July 3rd. The company had uniformed itself by Labor Day of that year. Our present fire siren was installed, went through a trial record period, and was formally accepted during the summer of 1915. And as you can tell, when it blows during the middle of the night, it is still going strong after 42 years of constant service. Mr. Whiting was the second chief of the company, taking that office at the annual meeting in December of 1913 and holding it until the December meeting of 1929. 16 years of faithful service. Although he did not retire from active service until several years later. On February 28, 1916, the company received a call for assistance from Falls Village. Mr. Whiting, would you tell us, please, how the men and equipment traveled to and from that fire?
Well, when we received the call from Falls Village that they were in a lot of trouble, it was about train time as the train comes down from Pittsfield to New York. We loaded our chemical engine in the express car and the men that were to go with it, unloaded at Falls Village and did all the work that we could to help them out down there. And then on the noon train that comes up through, we loaded it back into the express car and came back to King.
That's certainly a far cry from what we have to do today to get to Falls Village. Plans were started by the company in March of 1919 to procure a motorized fire truck. A Rio chassis was bought and chemical units like large soda and acid extinguishers were ordered. The unit was assembled and put into service in 1920 and known as Unit Number 2. In 1919, the membership of the company was raised from 30 to 35 and the number of line officers was increased from 3 to 5. 1920 was a big and busy year for the Canaan Hose Company. Its first motorized unit was obtained at a total cost of $1,803. The property of the Ford Music Store was purchased to be converted into a firehouse, and finally, the basic organizational setup of the company was changed. 4 members of the Hose Company became incorporators of a new organization to be known as the Canaan Fire Company Incorporated. At this point, the Canaan Hose Company was disbanded, and all of its members transferred to the Canaan Fire Company. By the end of 1922, the firehouse had been completely remodeled and heat and hot water had been added. In 1923, another important step had been started. The conversion of all fire hose and hydrants to the National Standard Fire Thread had been started in Canaan and all of the surrounding towns so that all equipment could be interchanged to facilitate the firefighting efforts of the various companies. This job was complete by the end of 1924. Also in 1923, plans were started for procuring a pumper truck. The annual ball, after being held on several different dates through the years, finally settled on George Washington's birthday in 1923, and has been held at that season ever since. A hand-drawn ladder truck was added by the company in 1923, a donation of Brewer Brothers. A pumper truck was ordered in February of 24, and by June of that year it was in service. It was used on a fire for the first time on July 28th at the Connecticut Lime Company plant. This truck was known as Unit Number 3. The old hand-drawn chemical wagon was dismantled and its spare parts were used on Number 3 to make a booster tank on that pumper. Every year, the number of fire calls was increasing from very few in the beginning until this year reported 15. In 1925, a Veterans Association was formed and portable telephones were added to the equipment. Mr. Whiting, would you tell us a little about the telephones and about the air mask, which was added the next year? I think that they were both very interesting pieces of equipment.
Found that pumper-operated fires out in the country, it was hard to get information between the firefighters and the pumper. And it was decided a telephone with a cord could be purchased, and it was, and set up. But soon after, the hose conditions were changed and a arrangement made so that we could attach more hose at the fire, and we found that the relief valve on the engine would take care of any shutoffs, so the telephone system was never used. But the air pump was purchased because of gas as we had had in the Falls Village fire under the hotel, where we had put in a considerable amount of chemical discharge and made it impossible for the firefighters to get in, and that would have been the best place to fight the fire. So, due to the fact that other companies had been using hand-driven air pumps to let their men down into places where there was gas, we purchased one and found that it could be used and was used. It was perfectly safe to go into a completely saturated smoke room and have fresh air from this pump to the firefighter.
It must be something like a diver's outfit. The company was still suffering from growing pains in 1926 and had negotiated an exchange of land with the Canaan National Bank and thus obtained the piece of property on which the firehouse now stands. The new firehouse was started and completed in 1927, and an open house was held on Armistice Day of that year. The older members who were active at that time feel that all credit for the new firehouse, especially the obtaining of the financing, be given to Mr. Fred M. Brewer, who did a tremendous amount of work at that time. Our company has always enjoyed, and still does enjoy, a versatile membership, and it has always carried on a very active program of fundraising. According to the records, it was decided to put on a pancake and sausage supper during the winter of 1927. It was held in Brewer Brothers' garage, and apparently they had an overflowing crowd as more than 400 people appeared to be fed. As an outcome of this affair, a committee of 3 of the members was appointed to get up a fire company cookbook. There is never any further mention of this committee, consisting of Mr. Alan Fuller, Mr. George Mather, and Mr. Roy Bojan. So apparently that was one committee which did not completely fulfill its duty. The notable feature of the year 1929 was the field day held on the playground and attended by the Lee, Millerton, Lakeville, Sharon, Norfolk, Falls Village, Terryville, and Sheffield Fire Departments. Also in this year, plans and negotiations for another pumper were started. This unit, number 4, was delivered on September 13, 1930, and was a 500-gallon per minute pumper. She cost $5,423. Number 4 is still in service in our fire company today and still does a good job. She was used for the first time at a fire at Mr. Floyd Canfield's house in Canaan Valley on September 20th, 1930. By the end of 1930, the company had purchased 2,000 feet of hose, 2.5-inch hose, which was distributed on all of its equipment. The worst fire in the history of the company up to this point occurred on May 19th, 1931, when C.A. Lindell's sash and blind factory burned. Our next largest fire was the Knickerbocker Hotel fire in January of 1933. The loss was estimated at $100,000. Our equipment was constantly changing for the better. I have not attempted to list all of the small equipment, but rather just the major pieces. In 1935, the old rail chemical truck was sold to the Pine Meadows Fire Department, and in the same year, a panel truck called Number 5 for transporting men and equipment was bought by money bequeathed by Henry B. Ives. This gave us all modern equipment for the times, in the form of 2 pumpers and a panel. In the December meeting of 1939, our first secretary, Mr. Alan Fuller, resigned after 28 years, although he remained an active member of the company. At this point of the history, there were still 2 charter members on active duty, Alan Fuller and Harry A. Holt. At the January meeting of 1940, Fred J. Hall became secretary and remains as such to the present time. Shortly after this, the practice of so-called still alarms was discontinued. Now the siren sounds for every alarm so that all members may have the opportunity to attend. On July 4th, 1941, a large and very successful field day was held at the airport to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the company. Later in the same year, it was voted to purchase a pumper with a committee of 5 to select and purchase such units. During World War II, the company was sorely taxed for manpower because of many members going into active service and others being occupied by war work. Because of this and other restrictions caused by the war, the annual ball was suspended and was not resumed until the winter of 1945. Number 6, a new 500-gallon pumper, was delivered at the end of 1942 and cost about $6,500. The company was also loaned a trailer pump unit by Civil Defense. The year 1946 had the most fire calls of any year in the company history, a total of 48 for the year. Our third chief, Leonard Caldwell, resigned as chief in 1949, having been chief for 20 years. At that time, Bob Harris was elected chief, a position which he held for 5 years. He was succeeded by John Mullen, who is our present chief, and who at this point I would like to introduce to have him speak to you a little about the modern equipment that we have in our house today and the aims of the company.
Good afternoon. In 1950, after the terrible Maine forest fires, our company started to plan for a new tanker pumper. It took us a long time to obtain this unit because this was the first unit which was actively planned by all 40 members. The present unit number 7 is the result of many months of discussion and research by the company. It is by far the biggest and most comprehensive piece of firefighting apparatus that we have ever owned, and it cost nearly $12,000. Since we obtained number 7, by carrying a large amount of water with us, we feel that we have been able to stop several fires which otherwise would have been lost. We are justly proud of this unit. We now have two-way radio communication on our 2 newest pumpers in the firehouse and in 2 portable units which the officers may carry with them. These radios have proved invaluable in coordinating the company's firefighting efforts. When the Southern New England Telephone Company installed its dial system in Canaan, we had to change our fire alarm system. Since that time, the state police in our town have been doing a wonderful job by receiving calls and sounding the siren and relaying information to us. We would like to emphasize here that people calling in alarms can be of great help by being very clear on the directions as to the location of the fire. The Canaan Fire Company likes to feel that it is of a real service to the community in other ways besides fighting fire. We have aided in searching for lost people in flood rescue and assistance. And with this thought, as well as fire protection in mind, we have always strived to screen prospective members as to their interest in the organization. By this means, we have always retained a very active group. This is probably the primary reason why the company became incorporated and has never been dominated by any interest outside of the membership. Consequently, we own outright all of our equipment, firehouse, and the land upon which it stands. And there is no actual taxation in the town for fire protection. With the addition of the new truck, a rescue boat given to us by Civilian Defense, and motor and other equipment, more room is needed in the firehouse, and that will probably be our next project.
Thank you, John. The history of the company has been one of constant interest and dedication from the time it was started to the present day. And we wish to take this opportunity to thank all of the members of our community for the loyal and constant support which they have given us down through the years. Thank you, Fred. And thank you, Mr. Whiting and Chief Mullen, for giving us a complete picture of the beginnings and growth of the Canaan Fire Company. And that brings us right down to the present moment, when final arrangements are being made for the 46th annual Washington's Birthday Ball. Chairman for the ball is Warren Foley. Warren, it must be a hard job being chairman of a ball, with all the details and all the plans to be carried out.
Well, Ned, this may come as a surprise to you, but I have probably the easiest job of anyone connected with the Fireman's Ball. My job is simply giving the orders, naming the committees, and then letting them do all the work. That's why I'd like to thank at this time all the committees and all the committee chairmen for the wonderful job they have done and the great plans they have put together on making this ball a success that I'm sure is going to be. You know, Ned, the firemen in this town have always prided themselves with the fact that we have always tried to give the people something really good for the money they have spent. That is why I'm sure that if the people of the town of Canaan and surrounding communities will come to the new elementary school in Canaan on February 21st, sometime between 9 and 1, they will have a wonderful time dancing to the music of Francis Delfino's orchestra. Among other attractions, we have a gala grand march planned for just before intermission. Probably, Ned, I should explain a little bit about the ball and the reason for it. It has been explained to you before that we are a free and independent company. Therefore, we must raise all our own money to buy our own equipment, since the town is required to buy none of it. The ball is our yearly appeal to the people of the town of North Canaan for funds, and most of the time it is our only function for the year, unless we have some definite piece of equipment in mind. This year is our 46th annual Fireman's Ball, and I can't urge the people enough to please give our appeal letter their kindest attention. You have heard our chief outline his plans and thoughts for coming years as to changes and improvements in our firehouse and additions of new equipment to our already good supply of fire apparatus. In order to accomplish these aims, we must have the necessary funds so that we may give you good protection that we have always tried to furnish this town of ours in the years gone by, and we hope to continue in the years to come. I am not sure just what else I can say on behalf of the Canaan Fire Company, but in summarizing, I might add that the best way I know of to show our appreciation for the hard work the committees have done to add life and color to the annual ball is to come to the school on February 21st and to enjoy this great affair with your fellow townsfolk.
And so you have heard from various members of the Canaan Fire Company in their respective capacities on this occasion in behalf of the company and the 46th Annual Washington's Birthday Ball being held next Thursday evening, February 21st, from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. in North Canaan Elementary School Gymnatorium on P Street. This school is new and the gym is beautiful and a source of great civic pride. Certainly the most important thought we want to implant steadfastly in your mind is support the Canaan Fire Company. Through your cooperation by buying tickets to the 46th Annual Washington's Birthday Ball, and get out and enjoy dancing to Francis Delfino's fine orchestra yourselves, and see and enjoy the beautiful new school and the beautiful gym where the floor is as smooth as glass. Remember, these dollars you spend for just good entertainment will go to work for you by helping to protect you, your family, your property, yes, even your whole community. Enjoy yourself, help yourself, protect yourself in a kind of package deal for which the price is very modest, but the value you can realize is immeasurable in comparison with the size of your initial investment. Peace of mind alone is a big portion. Certainly there is little more that we can say. We can only urge you again to respond generously because you can't regret it. You can only benefit. One last word to our listeners. If anyone has not received a card which carries the phone number for notifying the company of a fire, please get in touch with the company, either by mail or phone Taylor 47222, and Chief Mullen will supply you with one.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy, and thank you, members of the Canaan Fire Company. Remember, the 46th Annual Washington's Birthday Ball will be held on Thursday, February 21st, from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. at the North Canaan Elementary School Gymnatorium. This special program for the Canaan Fire Company has originated in our Federal Home Studios in Canaan. And this is Ned Tichenor returning you to Great Barrington.